The Rings of Alcyone. The 1977 lecture, Samael Aun Weor. Pay maximum attention. Primarily, it is necessary to know that from 1962, the 4th of February, between 2 and 3 in the afternoon, began the age of Aquarius, of the water carrier. There was an event that you will recall in your memories. I am referring to that convention of worlds, of planets that met, precisely, in the constellation of the Agitator. It was truly a celestial traffic jam, a clash of worlds. There was an eclipse of the sun and the moon. We had been talking about that cosmic event for many years, and we even gave the hour. We had advisedly affirmed that such an incident would take place on the 4th of February of 1962, between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. An event which concretely followed. We had been saying the same thing for 15 or 20 years. So, when the incident occurred, when the event arrived, none of the international Gnostic movement's brothers were surprised. They only saw confirmed what had been said with much anticipation. A convention of worlds, like the one which occurred on that date and year, at that hour, does not happen every day, but only when a new age begins. So, facts are facts, and we should surrender before the facts. However, that's not all. After that date something else is due to happen. We already know that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn and Uranus, and that it is completely revolutionary. Saturn is symbolized in alchemy by the black crow, the return to the original primitive chaos. As for Uranus, it has perfectly shown itself to be 100% rebellious, revolutionary, catastrophic. On this topic related to the stars, there are incidents, there are events that are well worth knowing about. Much has been said about Alcyone, and this calls for reflection. Once, in the superior worlds, I came to chat with him extensively. And so, I could prove that yes, he is truly an adept of the Great White Fraternity. Much has been said about Alcyone, and Krishnamurti has been mentioned, relating him to that star in some way. This is profoundly significant. Alcyone is a very interesting sun. Around that sun spin many other suns. It has been said that the sun which illuminates us is the 7th sun that circles Alcyone. The scholars of official science will naturally not accept this, but we esotericists do not ignore the reality which that great sun signifies. There is a great game of worlds around Alcyone. There are 7 suns, and each one illuminates and gives life to the planets and satellites that spin in its respective orbit. We cannot deny that this sun which illuminates us has its own group of worlds which it illuminates and gives life to. When one understands the order in which the solar systems are arranged and how the Pleiades have been cited in the sacred scriptures, in the Bible, and in many teachings of esoteric nature. Alcyone is, precisely, the principal sun of the Pleiades, and in its orbit gravitate 7 suns, our sun being the 7th which circles Alcyone. Each sun is the center of a solar system, and Alcyone is the center of 7 solar systems. This invites us to reflect a little. Let us remember Saturn with its large rings of stone, meteoritic sand and rock, etc., etc. These rings are exclusively bound to Saturn. But it is good to know that Alcyone also has its rings. These themselves are larger than those of Saturn, and, unlike those of Saturn, which are made of rock, meteoritic stones, sand and materials of a distinct kind, those of Alcyone undoubtedly form a whole and are radioactive. They are made of radiation. But, to what kind of radiation do I want to refer? Simply to the radiation which the splitting of the electron produces. The fractional electrons release an energy, a type of energy which some authors call manasic. This term is Sanskrit and is in some way related to the inferior manas or inferior mind, or to the superior manas or superior mind. Those electrons release a type of unknown energy. If the intellectual animal, wrongly called man, could disintegrate the electrons as he disintegrates the atom, obviously he would be prepared to provoke a catastrophe, which would not only affect the 3-dimensional part of Euclid, but would also affect the Sephirotic regions of Hod, or the world of emotions, or Netzach, the world of the mind, or possibly even Tifereth, the world of natural causes. Those regions would undergo great damages. If some lunatic earthling could disintegrate the electron, it would have a different energy to that which the splitting of the atoms produces. An energy even more terrible than the energy of the H-bomb or any other deadly element. Fortunately, scientists are not yet capable of splitting the electron and making use of the energy enclosed in them. In Alcyone, there are instances in which the electrons are split, destroyed, releasing a type of unknown energy, different to cathodic rays, X-rays and N-rays. Thereabout, in the year of 1974, 3 astronauts who were circling the Earth reported a type of radiation, or a type of unknown energy, unsuspected by official science. Obviously, since 1962, specifically since the 4th of February of that year, our planet Earth, and in general, the whole solar system, has been on the verge of entering the terrible rings of Alcyone. These rings extend for some light years. They are instantly enormous. Nevertheless, at any given moment, our solar system will enter Alcyone's rings. Very few sense what will follow. If the Earth enters first, it is said by Paul Otto Hess that everything will look like a great blaze, like real pictorial fireworks. But if the Sun were to enter first, according to the calculations that have been made, a radiation would interfere with the solar rays, and for this reason there would be a darkness that would last 110 hours, after which everything would return to normal and, unlike the first case, in which everything would look like a great blaze, in this second case, darkness would envelope the Earth. But there would be no darkness really, because everything would be sprinkled with lights. To give you an idea, it would be like a rainfall of stars upon the face of the Earth. Afterwards, everything would return to normal. In any case, our Earth, deep within Alcyone's rings, will be submitted to a very special vibration. The molecules, these being iron, phosphorus, calcium, copper, nitrogen, carbon, starch, etc., would be completely modified due to the radiation. This means that you will see a change in matter. The men of science believe that they know matter, but really they don't. The concept that one has about matter is no more than that, a concept and nothing more. Matter, as substance, is unknown to physicists. I am not merely saying that physical matter cannot be destroyed. Only the substance itself, that famous Iliaster which since the great cosmic night has been lying amidst the dark depths of the abyss, or bottomless space. Modern scientists don't know that. Atoms offer many surprises. Scientists know nothing about atoms before existence, and much less will they be able to know about atoms when the universe ceases to exist. Atoms offer many surprises that the men of science, nuclear physics, don't even remotely suspect. Atoms carry in their interior what the Hebrews call igneous particles, hachin or igneous souls. Those igneous souls are formidable. Without them, atoms would not be able to process themselves in the living constitution of matter. So, really, no one knows the powers of, for example, a few grains of sand. We could be certain that no one knows the powers contained within and of what the hachin or igneous souls are capable of, that are contained in each atom. The great magus of the East know how to work with the atom's igneous particles, and in the chaos. Those atoms, powered by igneous particles, obviously develop formidable powers that modern scientists don't even remotely suspect. Don't be surprised, now, when I say, the igneous radiations or vivifying radiations of Alcyone's atoms come to alter nature's molecules. This radiation, which is enveloping the Earth, will be terrible, so terrible that night will not fall for 2,000 years. The whole Earth will remain enveloped in this radiation, and sunlight will not be necessary to be able to see. This radiation will illuminate even the deepest caves, and for 2,000 years there will be no nightfall, just one great continuous day without night. That is how it is written, and the highest sages agree with it. Obviously, the men of science will not accept what we are emphatically stating today. In no way whatsoever will they accept it, because it doesn't commune with their scientific talents, but this is a reality. The organisms of all beings will be modified, plants as well as animals, etc., etc. Circle their gravitational centers, one then advances a lot in the field of understanding. Many plants that do not exist today, many animal species whose germs lie latent on the bottom of the seas, or on the rocks, or in the most distant mountains, will be vivified by the radiation and will come to take existence as a result or corollary. This event happens every 10,000 years. It has happened before and will happen again, because it complies with celestial transit, and our solar system has to forcibly pass through Alcyone's rings. Some will say that Alcyone is very far away, that it is a Pleiad and has nothing to do with our solar system. It is very nice to talk like that, in an ignorant way, but the reality is that the sun which illuminates us forms a part of Alcyone and is the seventh sun. It's to be looked at as a system of suns that circle Alcyone. The aforementioned event will happen over or will last 2,000 years. The radiation of Alcyone's rings will exert a specific influence on the rotation of our planet. This means that the rotation speed of its axis will slow down, and as a result or corollary, our world will continue circling the sun but in a wider orbit. It will move away a little more from the solar center. The verticalness of our planet's axis, in regard to the ecliptic, will be a concrete fact. The poles are melting due to the deviation of the Earth's axis. That is already proven. Nowadays, the magnetic pole no longer coincides with the geographical pole. With the terrible radiation of Alcyone, the poles will accelerate their deviation. Count Street Germain said, "The first things to change will be the seasons of spring and summer." Something that you can see perfectly. This spring has been everything but a spring. In the middle of spring, we have had to bear the cold. Summer has also not been the same. It looks like the seasons are bound to disappear. The poles are melting, and with the radiation of Alcyone, this process will accelerate. Ice will invade the entire north and south, only the equatorial zone will be livable. A new glaciation is approaching. The Earth has already borne other glaciations in the past, and a new one is approaching. The cold that recently occurred in the United States was like something that has never been seen before. When will it be that our Earth, or better said, our solar system, goes to penetrate the terrible rings of Alcyone? When will it be that we begin to cross that ring, which we have to cross every 10,000 years? No scientist could tell. Really, it is unpredictable. But since 1962 we have been on the verge of entering them. We will enter Alcyone's rings at any moment now, and that shouldn't surprise us. I refer to the facts. The 3 astronauts who were in orbit around the Earth in 1974 were those who reported a strange type of radiation. A terrible change in nature will approach, that is obvious. But the climax of climaxes will occur with the arrival of Hercolubus. The Hercolubus incident is going to be preceded with the entrance of our planet Earth into Alcyone's rings. It will be then when we come to realize that physical matter is not always the same. If you believe that physical matter, that which our world is composed of, always existed with the same mathematical formulas, you are completely mistaken. It was different in the ice, Hyperborean, Lemuric, and Atlantic ages, and now, upon crossing through Alcyone's rings, its mathematical formulas will completely change. Result: the elements that can be of use in present-day medicine, for example, will not be useful anymore. The formulas that are used to treat vegetables will become superfluous. The formulas for animals will end up out of fashion, as they say. The knowledge of contemporary physics will be the laughingstock of the whole world. Everything that is being taught in present-day chemistry will, within a few years, with the entrance into Alcyone's radiation, become useless because chemistry will change its formulas. The law of the pendulum will be proven once again. We are beginning the great cycle of transformations that began on the 4th of February of 1962 between 2 and 3 in the afternoon, in spite of what those stubborn people say. We refer to the facts. Never had there been a concentration in the sky so grand as the one on the 4th of February of 1962. Do not be surprised then, when our solar system suddenly enters Alcyone's rings. We must prepare ourselves from now. Many will not be able to bear the radiation and will die. Physical matter will become more radioactive, more phosphorescent, and this will in some way prove helpful for our work. It is clear that we must be reviewing our conduct daily. We must become more reflective, more careful with our critical judgments, and above all, more attentive with our negative emotions. In the psychological field itself, we find much disorder in people. The whole world is wretched because of negative emotions, and this is extremely serious. There is nothing more harmful to the profound inner development than negative emotions. When a negative emotion attacks you, express it in the best way possible. If a negative emotion arrives, a negative emotion of envy which is eating away at us, we should express it in a harmonious way, not in favor of the envy but of the well-being of others. If an emotion of anger is shaking us up at any given instant, let us talk with an extraordinary gentleness, and instead of feeling troubled by the one who upset us, speak well of the one who offended us. Thereby we won't be hurt internally. It is not an easy thing to express oneself well when one has a negative emotion, but that is the way it must be. If we have an emotion of irritation, because someone upset us, let us speak lovingly and well of that person. It is clear that we must not resolve ourselves on the surface. We need to eliminate those undesirable psychological elements that from moment to moment have brought about a negative emotion in us, whether it's anger, envy, hate, lust, pride, etc., etc. One must at least do that, eliminate the aggregates that have brought about those emotions in us, so that we won't be hurt. Unquestionably, this world of 48 laws is on the verge of entering Alcyone's rings. The whole world is shaken up by negative emotions, and nothing can be more contagious than they can. Bacteria and viruses exist, of that there is no doubt. Bacteria create many diseases, this is shown in test tubes. As for pathogenic viruses, they are infinitely small, and are therefore more harmful. Let us look at the cancer virus, for example. Some still think it hasn't been isolated. We have to inform that it has now been isolated in Israel. We do not know with which name it was baptized. We have baptized it with the name cancer and have spoken extensively about it. It is so tiny that one needs a powerful electronic microscope to be able to study it. In any case, viruses, for being so small, turn out to be more dangerous and contagious. However, negative people, or people with negative emotions, prove to be more contagious than viruses and bacteria. Those grumpy people, filled with envy, who are annoyed all the time, those people who are filled with diseases at every moment, those people who have a persecution complex, spellbound, who are hated by the whole world, are negative and contagious to the masses, to others. In our work we isolate such people. If they don't understand, if they feel hurt and think that they aren't loved, they are mistaken. They are loved and are hinted at trying to turn positive, friendly, magnetic. They are offered the opportunity of our studies, but are isolated in a sense, because they are dangerous to the masses. A negative person can infect other people negatively, and if they give a lecture, they infect thousands of people. They are more dangerous. Thousands of times more dangerous than viruses and bacteria. One should specify who are the negative people and which are the negative emotions. It is not enough to say that this bloke or so-and-so is a negative person. No, one should specify those who are negative. If someone were screaming all day, grumbling, shouting, would that be positive or negative? If someone is into esotericism and always feels spellbound, bewitched, and their life unfolds in that concept, would that be positive or negative? If someone is tremendously lustful and their life depends on lust, and if they are filled with dreadful emotions and see a sexual opportunity in any person of the opposite sex, what would we say about this person? If one glance from the opposite sex excites them, and this is enough to keep them lustful all the time, what could we think? Obviously, this is an example of a negative person, and of course, that person comes to infect other people. If someone goes around with negative emotions from instant to instant, they infect the whole world. The wrathful who thunder and flash all the time, infect others with their anger. Someone who feels harassed all the time is negative. There comes to mind the case of a friend of mine, who had the habit of putting his hands below the belt of his trousers. A fellow approached him armed with a gun and said, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," my friend answered. Then why do you have your hands like that? It's a habit that I have, sir, my friend answered. Ah. Good, exclaimed the other. Sorry, it's just that I'm in an angry mood. That is an example of someone negative who infects the whole world. People like that have to withdraw themselves from the masses. They don't comprehend nor understand that they are negative. They believe that one does not love them and are simply loved. They are contagious people and prevent the profound inner development of the being. That is the grave part. It is necessary for us to never let ourselves be overwhelmed by negative emotions, from the psychological point of view. One has the yearning to be able to visit or enter the Sephirotic regions of space. Perceiving a Sephira is one thing and penetrating its region is another. Obviously, the Sephirot are atomic and we as Gnostics have to penetrate the tree of life. We should know that there are several Sephirotic regions in space. To penetrate them is wondrous. How could we enter the Kabbalistic region of Hod if we do not have a psychological body? Psychological splits exist. The diverse psychological aggregates, at any given instant, are able to integrate in order to penetrate the Sephira Hod. But it would be a very subjective entrance. It would not have the same objectivity as the objectivity that one has when the second body has been created. One must create a body for those emotions. To which type of emotions am I referring? To superior emotions. Inferior emotions are obstacles for the experience of the real and for the psychological growth of the being. If we want to create a second body to enter the Sephirotic region of Hod, it is obvious that we must not waste our energies tactlessly, letting ourselves be overwhelmed by negative emotions, be them violence, hate, jealousy, pride, or whatever. If you spend your energies on inferior emotions, with what energy are you going to create the psychological body? In what way, if you're spending it? Saving the energies is essential for creating the psychological body. In order to then explore those regions of Hod, we have said that those immense regions are ruled by ineffable beings, by solar beings, by, for example, the Beni Elohim, the sons of God who live in regions so vast and profound. Only those who save their energy can penetrate the depths of Hod. It would not be possible to penetrate or have access to the mysteries of life and death without the Kabbalistic Hod. That is obvious. Let us begin by saving energy. When a negative emotion shakes us up, it is well worth observing what kind of psychological aggregate produced it and, after having observed it in action, submitting it to the technique of meditation, to disintegrate the aggregate. Otherwise, how would we do it? The worst of it is that negative emotions turn human beings into liars. The lie induces a wrong connection, because the energy of the Ancient of Days, which flows harmoniously and perfectly through the 10 Sephirot of the Hebraic Kabbalah, reaches Malkuth, the kingdom, the physical person, the psychophysical person. In the liar, these are connected badly. This induces a conscious dislocation of the mind, and the lie emerges as a result. In other words, an errant connection. One can be a liar because of a negative emotion, which turns us into slanderers and liars, or one can be a liar consciously and willfully. In any case, it is a negative connection of mind to the superior centers of the being. A dislocation of the mind is induced with the superior centers of the being. One should tell the truth at whatever the cost and whichever way it comes out. Telling the truth and nothing but the truth is the crude reality of facts. Negative emotions turn people into liars. The karma for liars is monstrosity. Children who are born with two heads, deformed, have been poorly connected to the superior centers of the being. Consequence, one comes into existence with a deformed body. There is where the lie is. We should pay a lot of attention to this issue. When a second psychological body has been formed, which allows us to enter the Sephirotic regions of Hod, one can verify lies and untruths for oneself. It is said that Michael is the regent of that Sephira, and it is obvious that he shines wonderfully in that region. How could we explore those regions if we are liars, if we are victims of negative emotions? Obviously, it is not possible. How could we explore the regions of Netzach if we do not connect ourselves correctly to the superior centers of the being? To explore the region of Netzach, one needs to have created a psychological mental body, otherwise, it is impossible. No one can create a psychological body if they let themselves be overwhelmed by negative emotions. There would just not be enough energy for one to be able to create an individual mind, which would then allow us to explore the psychological regions of the universal mind. To be able to explore the regions of Hod or Netzach, one needs to learn to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, and no one can tell the truth when they let themselves be overwhelmed by negative emotions. We need to obey the Father, and whoever lets negative emotions overwhelm them does not obey the Father. The Father is the truth and nothing but the truth. To obey the Father, the connections must be perfect. One must learn to connect with the Father in a harmonious way, correctly. Those who have formed the body of conscious will have obviously learnt to obey the Father. Everyone has the Ancient of Days deep within, as Ben Hodchain mentions, the great Kabbalist, but few are those who know how to obey the Ancient of Days. One cannot obey the Ancient of Days if one does not carry out the Father's will. The Father's will is not carried out by those who lie. The Father's will is not carried out by those who let themselves be overwhelmed by negative emotions. So, my dear brothers, it is necessary to learn to live wisely. It is necessary to learn to explore ourselves, to self-observe better. We are now going to enter an extraordinary period. The Great Selection has begun. Not all of humanity who populate the Earth's surface will be suitable for the seedbed of the future sixth great race, which will exist in the world to come. Once the Earth enters Alcyone's rings, everything which the laborers of the great work have said will become more evident. The tree of life is the spinal medulla. The tree of wisdom are the 10 Sephirot, with which the Creator's 22 great arcanum, letters, sounds and numbers, the logos, created the universe. All of creation emanates from a Hin Sof, but creation is not equal, neither in essence nor in potency, to a Hin Sof. The first emanation of a Hin Sof is the ineffable Ancient of Days, who is the being of our being, the Father and Mother in us. Inferential peace.